The Milwaukee Brewers have a huge problem. After being the best regular season team in the National League, I was expecting them to make more noise in the playoffs, but once again, the lights just proved too bright. As a Mariner fan, I do want to say that I feel for the Brewers, and not only because they were originally the Seattle Pilots, but more so the way they run their organization. If you actually stop and compare the rosters, these two teams are a lot more similar than you think, being anchored by a young superstar center fielder, along with an elite starting rotation, and their best player is a catcher. Then on top of that, both organizations are extremely frugal, with neither of their payrolls ever passing the teens. I feel like these two teams are tied, especially because neither one of them has ever won a World Series. Because of Milwaukee's heavy trade philosophy, early rumors are saying they could be moving on from longtime ace Freddie Peralta, who's been with the team for a very long time, but 2026 will be his final year. With the rise of phenom rookie Jacob Mizorowski, there's not really any reason to keep Peralta, and he's almost certainly gonna walk in free agency. If you're new to the channel, I try to make my rebuilds as grounded and realistic as I possibly can, making moves that I feel like would kind of make sense in real life, and at least for Milwaukee, one of those might be trading Andrew Vaughn. The former top 5 pick was a breakout star for the team, and after we sim 2025, he'll have 2 years left before free agency. At 26 years old though, it might be worth keeping him around while Andrew Fisher develops, especially because Rhys Hoskins will be a free agent after 2026. Aside from those two guys, I don't see anybody getting imminently traded, although there are a few long-term questions, such as William Contreras. Milwaukee is known as the catcher lab for a reason, and that's because they pretty much completely saved Contreras' career, famously acquiring him from the Braves and making him a solid defensive catcher. In the spirit of the Brewers model, he might not get a long-term extension, especially because they have 22-year-old Jefferson Caro waiting in the wings. Caro is just one of Milwaukee's really talented prospects, and I do believe we could see him play in this rebuild along with Andrew Fisher. The Brewers are a draft, develop, and trade team, and their farm system is one of the best in baseball, led by the elite teenage phenom Jesus Mate. At 70 overall and 17 years old, the Dominican-born player is one of the best prospects in the league, and at some point in this rebuild, he's gonna be our starter. Just like with my Mariners rebuild, I'm not expecting this to be super challenging, as the Brewers are already a very good team, but the bigger concern is there's a ton of talent in the National League, with young teams like the Reds looking to be long-term contenders, along with the Cubs, who forced 5 games in the NLDS. Out of all the teams in the National League though, of course there's one that stands up above the rest: the Rockies. I'm just kidding. Obviously it's the Dodgers. Not only do the Dodgers already have a super team, but they always spend big money in MLB The Show, as in my Mariners rebuild, they signed Tarek Skubal and it was absolutely insane. Ohtani's gonna be in their nightmares for a long time, and with the way this organization is run, we're gonna have to find a reasonable way to beat them with the payroll restrictions that our ownership has given us. In order to catch up to where the real-life MLB is, we need to sim through the entire 2025 season, but a large part of setting us up for next year is the MLB Draft. I didn't pay too much attention to scouting, but it seems we still got some really solid players, starting with our 6'7" lefty pitcher, aka Big Cox. With the future of Woodruff and Peralta looking a little uncertain, that is a really good get at the top of the draft, while we also added some really quality position players, along with a closer near the end who's 70 overall. That adds a ton of value to what is already an elite farm system, and now in the NLCS, history repeats itself, this time with a sweep from the Phillies. The Yankees would go on to win the World Series, with Giancarlo Stanton being the World Series MVP and Aaron Judge winning the regular MVP. Then in the National League, it was our division rival Seiya Suzuki, and then the Dodgers wiped the floor with the Cy Young, while Tarek Skubal wins it in the AL. With the 2025 season out of the way, now it's time for the fun part, the offseason. At least for the case of Brewers fans though, this might be an anxious time of the year, as guys like Freddie Peralta could be on the trade block. He is coming off a very good season with a 3.11 ERA, and with a year left on his contract, he has a lot of value. Above all else though, if we do trade Peralta, we want to make sure we get a solid pitcher back, and I feel like the New York Mets are a great fit. Clay Holmes is a really solid pitcher who still has 2 years left on his deal, so we are starting out this trade package with him, along with one of their top pitching prospects, Brandon Sproat. Not only is he one of their best pitching prospects, but is also one of the top in the entire organization, and he seems like the type of player Milwaukee would be really interested in, along with their number 2 prospect. To make this move happen, we're sending them back a 25-year-old pitcher and pulling the trigger. While losing Peralta is certainly not a good thing, the offset of Clay Holmes, along with the continued development from Jacob Mizorowski, and having 24-year-old Logan Henderson in AAA should be able to sort of offset that. Along with that though, we're also adding another highly regarded pitching prospect in Brandon Sproat, and with the regression of Christian Yelich, it's really good to have another option in left field. Even though Carson Bench is 63 overall, in real life he's the Mets' #2 prospect, so I feel like we maximized our return on Freddie Peralta. Then as far as free agents go, the only notable losses are Danny Jansen and Jordan Montgomery, along with somebody else who I'll get to in a second. While Montgomery was really good in his one season with the Brewers as a left-handed specialist, it feels like he set himself up for a pretty nice payday with another team. Then it's kind of the same story for backup catcher Danny Jansen, as he's gonna take those goofy looking glasses to another team and either be a starting catcher or a DH. The other guy I didn't mention though was Rhys Hoskins, and you might be wondering why he has 1 year before free agency. In a move that I still don't understand, MLB The Show completely removed options from this game, and Hoskins has a $17 million mutual option with the Brewers. With the season he just had, that is very likely to be declined, and while releasing him would cost us $12 million, I think the most realistic decision is to DFA him where another team can pick him up off waivers. Hoskins would get picked up by the first base needy Seattle Mariners, which is a really nice move for them. Just from my own playing experience, I didn't feel like it was fair to play out that contract when it wasn't correct in the game, and there's a similar reason for why I'm not going to trade Christian Yelich despite his regression, and that is his no trade clause. No shock here, those are also not an MLB The Show, but fortunately Yelich is still playing at a really high level. As far as players from the minors that will be coming up to the majors though, it looks like we're going to have a few additions. Jefferson Cairo is going to be our backup catcher, while we're adding 2 pitchers to the 40-man in Logan Henderson and Robert Gasser. That is going to leave next year's rotation looking something like this, and honestly I'm okay with that. Henderson and Myers still have a lot of room to develop, and Clay Holmes should be serviceable once again, as he was last year with the Mets. That being said, I really don't think we need to address the pitching in the offseason, although the offense is a bit of a different story. We could really use another quality left-handed bat, as there's only 4 guys currently in the lineup. Checking out the free agency class though, it looks to be mostly right-handed bats, outside of a few players we definitely can't afford. Willie Castro is one player that I think would be a great fit on this team, but unfortunately he's seeking a 5-year deal. Just looking at Milwaukee's track record in free agency, that doesn't seem like a move they'd make, so we're gonna move on and find something else. Digging through the bargain bins, one player who could be an option though is either Max Kepler or Michael Conforto. While Conforto does have beat potential, Kepler has a bit more flexibility position-wise, but it seems our need for a left-handed bat is much stronger in the infield where Durbin and Ortiz both struggle against righties. Because of that, I'm gonna look for some trade options, and I think I found a pretty decent one in Nationals backup third baseman Jose Tena. He is 76 overall with plenty of more room to develop at 24 years old, and he's pretty much an exclusive righty hitting specialist coming off of a down year. With Brady House taking over the full-time job, this shouldn't cost a lot, although they're asking for big cocks. That's ridiculous. I'm definitely not going to make that move, but I will trade this 49 overall B potential shortstop. Tena will successfully take Caleb Durbin out of the lineup against righties, but along with him, I also have to note that incoming rookie Isaac Collins is a switch hitter, also capable of playing every spot in the infield. Those definitely aren't the flashiest moves, but with so much young talent in need of playtime at the show, there's not a whole lot of room to improve. We are going to make one signing in free agency though, going after lefty reliever Jalen Beeks, and why not also seek a reunion with Jacob Junis, who the Brewers had last year. We're offering him a 2-year deal, and he joins the Brew Crew. While having an entire rotation of righties isn't usually ideal, there's a lot of lefty options in the organization already, and we add another one with Beeks. That is going to wrap up a quiet but ultimately effective offseason, and I feel like we're going into the new season with a better roster than we had last year. In the rotation though, we did lose Freddie Peralta, so we're relying on Clay Holmes and the rookie Logan Henderson to replace him. Then in the bullpen, this team has not missed a beat ever since trading Devin Williams, as they still have Aaron Ashby, Abner Uribe, Nick Mears, and Trevor McGill. Despite a few key losses, including Freddie Peralta, I do feel like this team is better than it was last year, but guys like Miz and Jackson Chourio need to continue developing. For the time being though, I do feel like this lineup is as good as we're gonna get, and with so many young controllable players on the team, there's a lot of flexibility in the way we choose to overbuild the squad. We are starting the season on the road against Atlanta and do get the victory in the first 2 games. We would go on to win that series 3-1 before taking on New York, and after splitting the first 2 games, we do win the series. While it's definitely too early to make any bold claims about this team, given all of the doubts about our young rotation, it seems they're holding up pretty well. That is going to bring us into the start of scouting, where I want to continue adding to a farm system that's already really good. We currently have 6 top 100 prospects, including Jesus Mate, who I believe is a top 10 prospect in all of baseball. Our draft last year definitely put us in the right direction, as Mate does indeed come in at number 8. He is a 74 overall switch hitter whose contact has really come along, and I feel like there's a chance for him to reach the majors this year. He's definitely in a bit of a weird situation though, as he's being blocked by Joey Ortiz and Bryce Terang, so if he does come up, we might move him over to third to compete with Caleb Durbin. He will definitely stay in the lineup against lefties, but Jesus Mate is a more well-balanced player who does have a much higher ceiling. Along with him though, we also have Cooper Pratt, who's actually ahead of him. He is our number 4 prospect and another guy that we could either see make his debut or potentially trade for something else. The good thing about Milwaukee is that their farm system always seems to be in pretty good shape, which does work out for us. We're 9-6 at the start of the year, and depending on what holes emerge on the team, we could always leverage our farm system to upgrade at different positions. On the scouting end of things, I'm looking at center fielder Tommy Bourbon, who can play everywhere in the outfield and shortstop. I gotta finish his profile, but he's looking like a very high ceiling player with extremely unique versatility. Also, I do want to point out that this Brewers team is built on speed, and Bourbon has a lot of it. Meanwhile though, we're trying to stay in first place in the division, and we're facing off against the Phillies, who hand us an embarrassing loss. We get swept, and just like that, are down to 500. We're in a really bad spot as we're 500 and just lost a series to the White Sox, although we do rebound against the Astros. I cannot believe that we're still in first place in our division after this very underwhelming performance, but shockingly, the offense has been really disappointing. It's really not a good look that 2 of our best offensive players in Christian Yelich and Jackson Chourio are both hitting under 200, but along with that, we're also seeing bad seasons from Andrew Vaughn, Bryce Terang, and Sal Frelick. Scrolling down the list though, it really does not end there. About half of our offense is underperforming, which definitely makes me wonder what the rotation is doing. It really doesn't feel like we should be 500, but thankfully Mizorowski and Brandon Woodruff are having really nice years. Then on top of that, Robert Gasser's been really solid as a long reliever, while Clay Holmes has been alright. Given our overall struggles though, it's a miracle that we're above 500 as we win a series against the Cardinals at home within our division. That is going to take us to 17-15 as we're the only team in the NL Central above 500. We've been really fortunate that despite our overall offensive struggles though, William Contreras is playing like an MVP. He is in 3rd place for the award, while Mizorowski's in 1st for the Cy Young. However, at 17-15, now we're facing the Dodgers, who win the series. That is going to take us right back down to 500, so we really need to figure it out. On the bright side, we did just scout Gary Hamilton, who's a very interesting first base prospect. He is a contact first player ranked 24th in the class, and the Aussie likely has a pretty high ceiling. While we're in first place in the division though, we are playing mediocre baseball, and if things don't turn around, we might want to consider trading Contreras. Just being realistic, I don't think moving on from Christian Yelich is an option due to his regression and his no trade clause, so that is a ton of money getting eaten up for a potential Contreras extension. That being said, our future at catcher is not exactly guaranteed, so I'm going to be scouting a few guys in the draft class. I want to keep Contreras, but we just got swept by the Dodgers and got beat by the Pirates, so things aren't exactly looking good. That being said, I'm starting to think that the best long-term solution is selling high on Contreras and giving a chance to Jefferson Caro. We also just scouted Patrick Roerick, who is ranked 26th in the class, so it seems the options are not going to be limited. If players like Jackson Chourio don't wake up soon, this could be a very rough season, although here come the wins. We just won 2 division series in a row against the Cubs and Cincinnati, which will bring us to 29-24. Along with winning more games though, we continue setting ourselves up for the next draft, discovering Juan Mota, who's the number 14 ranked player in the class. Out of nowhere, it seems things have gotten better for Milwaukee as the wins keep coming, and we have a 4-game division lead over the Cubs. Simming forward though, we just got a terrible break. We have to put Mizorowski on the 60-day IL. The Cy Young leader gets hurt, and now it's up to Brandon Woodruff to fulfill the role of our ace. Robert Gasser is sliding into the 5 spot, and we gotta bring somebody else up. With one of our superstars on the IL, it's gonna have to be a next man up approach, as Quinn Priester's on the roster and fortunately looks serviceable. He's got a 66 walks per 9 and is putting up really good numbers at AAA, so we're gonna call him up to MLB. Despite losing Mizorowski for a couple months though, it seems we're actually holding up pretty well, as we're still 50-34. That is good for a 7.5 game lead in the division, and our rotation has rebounded quite well with Clay Holmes on a hot streak. He was a part of the Freddie Peralta trade and is having one of his best seasons as a pro. While the rotation's been pretty good though, the offense has been a different story. Yelich and Chourio are still really struggling, along with Joey Ortiz, who I'm starting to think may not be the long-term solution at shortstop. He is 27 years old, hitting a .192, and with his contact not improving, there might not be a reason to keep him around. Another guy I'm worried about though is Jackson Chourio, whose power has started to come back, but he's ultimately still on a cold streak. Despite our struggles though, our offense is tied for 13th in the league in runs, and on top of that, we're also 12th in the league in hits, so we've actually been a pretty weird team. That trend continues as we're 4th in the league in ERA despite missing our ace. We're still in first place by 8.5 games though, so I'm very interested to see what happens at the trade deadline. Before we can get there though, it is time for the MLB Draft, where we're picking number 27. I'm planning on taking the best non-discovery player on the board, which might actually end up being this pitcher, Matthew Ridgway. He is looking to be a high-ceiling player with a really solid walks per 9, and that's essential since we're losing Brandon Woodruff. I really want to get a player like this in the building, so it might make sense to take him in the first round. Along with him though, I'm also high on Vernon Dixon, although because he's a discovery guy, I'm gonna wait to take him until later in the draft. Then looking at position guys though, I do like Juan Mota and Gary Hamilton, although they're not really first round options. Another area of focus is closer, because while we do have some quality relievers, it would be great to bring in some type of pure closer. We did draft a couple guys like that last year, but in the bullpen, I feel like the more the merrier. My plan for our first pick is to take Matthew Ridgway, but in the event that he's gone, I'm gonna target either Tommy Bourbon or someone like Juan Mota. Vernon Dixon will almost certainly not be our pick because he's a discovery guy, but I do want to take him sooner rather than later. At number 1 though, I do see that Matthew Ridgway is off the board, and I did not expect that. He would have been an absolute steal at number 27, but nonetheless, we're gonna have to find another option. Simming to our selection though, the rest of the board was really not good for us, as Juan Mota goes at number 14, while Gary Hamilton goes at 20. I really didn't expect either of those moves, so now I'm kinda put under pressure. After our pick at 27, our next selection doesn't come until 61, where we have back-to-back picks. That is gonna give us a bit of flexibility, but as far as our round 1 option goes, I'm ultimately torn between 2 players in Tommy Bourbon and Felipe Silva. While Bourbon is a project and the lower-ranked player, he does have a ton of speed, which the Brewers love. I'm very tempted to take him here, especially with the struggles of Chourio, but ultimately I think the higher floor option is Felipe Silva, and with the future of our rotation looking pretty uncertain with Woodruff and Clay Holmes becoming free agents within 2 years, I think this is the move in round 1. That's a very safe pick, and hopefully he can get on the field before the end of the rebuild. I'm not fully confident with that, but I am going to sim to our next selection, where I do see several good players still available. Then to make things even better for us, we have back-to-back picks, so I'm taking one of my favorite players on the board in Patrick Roarick. Then with the second selection, Vince Smart is a really good value here as a high-floor, high-ceiling closer. While I'm tempted to take Vernon Dixon early, since he's already lasted this long as a discovery guy, I think Smart is the smart move. And simming forward to our next pick, he is still on the board, along with Nate Best. I was really set on taking Dixon here. Best is still on the board, which I didn't expect. While Dixon's the higher-ranked player, Best is guaranteed to be gone by next round, so I do want to take him here. Once again, I'm hoping the gamble pays off, and sure enough, it does. And with the number 2 player still on the board, I'm not going to let him slide any further. That might be the steal of the draft, as our board is still intact for round 5, so I'm once again taking the best player on the board, which is another discovery pitcher, this time in Alexi Castro. He was our 3rd pitcher, and then we drafted a 4th in round number 6, closing out another successful draft. That will take us to the break, where we are 57-40, and I gotta say that maintaining the NL Central Central lead with Jacob Mizorowski on the IL is a huge deal. He has 29 days remaining, and I'm excited to get him back. In his absence though, Clay Holmes and Brandon Woodruff have been good enough, while Tobias Myers is really stepping up as a rookie. In the absence of Miz though, Robert Gasser's also played really well, and while the numbers don't look great for Logan Henderson, he has gotten better over time. In his previous 2 starts, he's only averaged about 2.5 runs per outing. Checking out our stats at the break, the big story of the year is that most of the offense has really not been good. Regression has hit hard for Christian Yelich, who was once an MVP winner, and his OPS has dropped by about 150 points compared to last year. This has easily been the worst season of his career, and it really doesn't help us that guys like Joey Ortiz, Jackson Chourio, along with Sal Frelick and Bryce Terang are just not playing up to standard. These are the young players that the Brewers are counting on to develop for their future, but as it stands, things are not really looking good. While William Contreras and Rookie of the Year frontrunner Isaac Collins have been really good, most other pieces of the offense leave a lot to be desired. That being said, I'm gonna make a few lineup changes, moving Jose Tena to shortstop, along with moving Isaac Collins all the way up to the number 3 spot. This will effectively demote Christian Yelich, as I want him as far down in the lineup as we can get him. We're gonna see if that lineup change can spark the offense, as the rotation has been carrying our squad, putting up really impressive numbers. Along with that, it's also been a really solid year for the bullpen, as one of our free agent signings, Jalen Beeks, is having an extraordinary year. We've also officially moved Abner Uribe to our full-time closer, and I'm interested to see how that goes. Scrolling through his recent games, I'm not seeing any blown saves, which is definitely encouraging. Looking at All-Star voting, it's definitely unfortunate that Mizorowski got hurt, because he'd probably be the starter in the National League. Instead though, I'm not really sure how many All-Stars we're gonna have, as Trevor McGill makes it, along with William Contreras. After that though, I would be really shocked if there was anybody else, and it doesn't look like there is. We're 7 games up in our division, going into the second half, so I do want to make a move at the deadline, although I'm not sure what that's gonna be yet. If we're gonna be competitive in this rebuild, we do have to make a couple tough decisions, and one of them is whether to trade or extend Contreras. Obviously, it wouldn't make any sense to trade him while we're first place in the division, but the framework of a new deal for him is very likely gonna be the extension given to Cal Raleigh. Baseball's best catcher was given a 6-year extension worth $105 million, which averages out to $17.5 million a year. I do want to say though that Cal signed that extension before his 60 home run season, so the Mariners got a pretty good deal. That also means that William Contreras' extension's gonna cost a lot more money, as he's 98 overall and closer to free agency than Cal was. That being said, we're gonna start off offering him a 6-year, $130 million contract, and that's gonna take a bit of tweaking. How about 31.5, going up to 32.5? He's still not quite there. I was trying to play hardball, but the best move for this team is to just give him what he wants, and he does accept it. At the beginning of the rebuild, I knew that one of Contreras or Jefferson Caro was going to be the shortstop of the future, and now that we have our answer, we might want to shop Caro around. While Caro would be a really good DH for us, it might make sense to trade him for a piece that can help us win now, as a backup catcher in DH does have less value than other positions of need. The only problem with trading him though is it seems we're pretty loaded at nearly every position that we could upgrade at. Obviously the big position to upgrade would be shortstop, as Joey Ortiz has struggled with a 197 batting average, and Bryce Terang is not having a good year. One thing I am concerned about with this trade though is it might not be easy to find a team making a playoff push that really needs a catcher. One candidate to move him to could be the Yankees, who are starting Victor Caratini. They could definitely use an upgrade, along with the Rangers, who are still starting Jonah Heim, and he is struggling. I'm definitely not set on trading Caro, as it's gonna take a solid offer, and I just don't think the Yankees have the pieces we need. George Lombard is not ready for the show, and the only other player I'm remotely interested in is third baseman Oswaldo Cabrera. Even then though, while he is 27 years old, he's nothing special and hasn't played a game in 2 years. However, I do see that they have a lot of starting pitchers, and someone like Will Warren could be a really solid option. He's 26 years old with decent hits and walks per 9, and along with that, he has about 4.5 years of control before free agency. Now, just because I'm interested though, I'm gonna package him with George Lombard, and that is certainly an option. For a very strong up-and-coming player like Caro, I feel like that's a pretty solid return, but I do want to compare it with a trade with the Rangers, as we could acquire Josh Smith. He would help our shortstop problem right now and has 2.5 years before free agency, and just like in a trade with the Yankees, we could get back a solid pitcher in return. With Brandon Woodruff pending free agency, we need as many good pitchers as we can get, and Winston Santos looks solid. While the Rangers package might not be as flashy as the Yankees one, I think it does help us out more right now, because with the rotation already in pretty good shape, I don't really think we need Will Warren. That being said though, this package can get even better for us, as we can throw a reliever on top and make the deal. After the extension of William Contreras, I feel like getting a shortstop and a solid pitching prospect for Caro was as good as we could get, especially because it allows us to option Joey Ortiz, who really needs some work. That is a deal that fills a couple needs for us, as I was looking for another solid arm along with a shortstop, so I think our work here is done at the deadline. Some of you might not agree with trading Caro, but I do want to note that we just swapped our backup catcher for 2 players who can contribute right now, along with our number 5 organizational prospect in Winston Santos. Speaking of prospects though, it's the start of August and time to view our draft class. Once again, I feel like we did a pretty good job, especially seeing that our first pick went up to number 18 in the class after scouting. With Woodruff likely going to free agency, we need this guy to have a high floor, and that was actually not the case. It seems that our scouts lied about his rating, as he's only an 82 potential and really nothing special. That is a huge disappointment and ultimately a waste of a first-round pick, although it seems we recovered quite nicely taking Vernon Dixon down the board. He is looking like a future superstar with 95 potential and 68 overall. He could very well be the next Mizorowski, and the best part is, we got him in the 4th round. I can't say this draft is as good as I thought it was going to be, although we did get 4 really solid players in the middle of the draft. As far as our first round pick goes though, while I am disappointed, none of the players that we passed on are looking even close to as good as the pitcher. It would have been great to get Matthew Ridgway, but he went number 1 to the Pirates, and after that we were kinda cooked. Now with the draft out of the way though, we are starting the month of August, and remember, we get Mizorowski back later this month. He is sliding right back into our number 1 spot, and I gotta give a ton of credit for the rotation for holding it down. Despite being an incredibly flawed team, we're first place in the division, and that is all that matters. With a 6-game lead over the Cubs entering September, it's gonna take a lot for us to not win the division, and even more for us not to make the playoffs. The offense was off to a concerning start to the year, but it seems everything's coming back together at the right time, as Churio's starting to play like his former self. The 21-year-old center fielder was naturally gonna go through some growing pains, but his turnaround is coming at a great time and seems to have affected the rest of the offense. Terang, Frelick, and Yelich were often struggling right alongside him, but are also over 700 OPS, so with the offense starting to do its thing and the rotation being better than ever, another deep run in the playoffs seems inevitable. We are full sending and simulating all the way to the end of the season as we start things off with a dangerous series against the Rockies, and midway through the month, we're approaching 90 wins. They would get there finishing 94 and 68 and winning the division, although they do not get the first round bye. Both the Dodgers and the Phillies won 100 games, so that means they're playing in the wild card. They're going to be taking on the Diamondbacks, who at least in real life were sellers at this past trade deadline and have an uncertain future, but with Corbin Burns and Dylan Cease, they might actually be a problem for us. The reason I say that is their rotation is not loaded at all, but we're only playing 3 games. With 2 of the best pitchers in the league, along with an MVP runner-up in Corbin Carroll, along with Ketel Marte, this might actually be a tough series. For the wild card, I'm just gonna simulate it and see what happens as we lose the first game, and it's gonna come down to game 3. Now in a winner-takes-all game 3, the entire last offseason of the rebuild pretty much falls on this game. Clay Holmes is on the mound, and remember that he was a part of the return for Freddie Peralta, and the future of our season is very much in his hands as we lead 1-0 in the 5th. Thankfully for us, Holmes has been holding it down, although he gives up a late run. That is really not good, but here comes Sal Frelick putting us up by 2. Thanks to our offense's heroics, it seems we're moving on to the next round as it's 5-1. It seems we made the right move moving on from Freddie Peralta as we're trying to close them out and do so successfully. Milwaukee is moving on to the divisional series, and they'll likely be playing either the Phillies or the Dodgers. It's actually not even likely, but guaranteed, as it it will be Philadelphia. This is one of only 2 teams in not just the National League, but the entire MLB that had a better record than us, and looking through their roster, it's very easy to see why. Unlike the Diamondbacks, they are loaded at starting pitchers, so this is going to be a real challenge. Aside from the rotation though, this is a complete team with an incredible bullpen led by Johan Duran, and then after that, they have one of the best catchers in the league, along with Bryce Harper and Trey Turner. To make things even worse though, they signed Kyle Tucker in the offseason, so we might be in for a rough series. As a wildcard team, we're not even being given a day off coming into this, so our rotation is gassed, which is why we're starting Robert Gasser. He's going up against 98 overall Christopher Sanchez and gives up a run in the 3rd inning. Now we have the bases loaded though, and Frelick has the chance to be the hero, although he swings and misses at a terrible pitch. We're not going to get many scoring opportunities against a true ace like Sanchez, although I have to give props to Gasser for keeping us in it. He only gave up 1 run, but now gives up a solo home run, and we're down by 2, but Chourio delivers. That is exactly what we needed, although Bryce Harper strikes right back, and there's no way. The game was tied, but they walk it off with a deep drive to left from Nick Castellanos as we go down in Game 1. That was an insane final 2 innings, as we were down 2-0 in the 8th, but Jackson Chourio tied the game, and then Andrew Vaughn tied it up again in the top of the 9th. Unfortunately for us though, the Phillies' magic was just too much, so now we really need a spark and have Mizorowski on the mound, although he gives up 2 runs. So far he has not had a good postseason, giving up another run in the 2nd, as we also strand the bases loaded. We needed a strong showing from our ace, but it was 7-1, so we're already facing elimination, but do survive. Now we're trusting Clay Holmes to have another good performance and send us to a winner-takes-all Game 5, where we're gonna have to take on Christopher Sanchez once again. Unfortunately though, early on we're down 2-0, so the offense needs to deliver. Unfortunately for us though, Harper just went deep, so it's 3-0, and even against Luzardo, we have not been able to get anything going. We scored our first run in the 4th inning, but we tie up the game on a 2-run shot from Contreras before taking the lead. Right when I counted them out, the offense keeps us in this game, and we could very well be going to game number 5. We're in the 9th inning, looking to close them out. Abner Uribe, you're kidding. That is gonna tie it up as we're going to extras, and this one is going to come down to the wire. The Rookie of the Year, Isaac Collins, comes up with a walk-off solo home run in the 11th, so we've now won 2 games in a row. This series has been far too close for comfort, and it's all gonna come down to this. We are back in Philadelphia, once again facing off against Christopher Sanchez, and get off to an electric start. This is a team that really hits lefties well, and we've got Brandon Woodruff on the bump, who's been in these clutch situations a few times. This is the battle between teams that regularly choke in the playoffs, as we're still leading 4-0, and the Phillies blowing a 2-0 series lead would probably be the most Phillies thing ever. They managed to score 2 runs, but it was too little too late, as Milwaukee, who was facing elimination after 2 games of the series, surges back with 3 victories in a row. They have earned their spot in the NLCS, and we're gonna find out if that means they're taking on the Dodgers. Sure enough, just like last year in real life, they will be playing their 2nd straight LCS against LA. The number 1 seed Dodgers will have the home field advantage, and they're looking for a 3-peat with this insane lineup. The Dodgers may be the better team on paper, but I'm really hoping that history doesn't repeat itself. If we're gonna have a chance in this series, we need the Miz to play better than he has, and on top of that, the offense needs to keep producing in clutch situations as they've been doing throughout the playoffs. In the event that we don't win though, we're likely gonna be losing Brandon Woodruff during the offseason, and this is really his last chance to win anything. The former 11th round draft pick has been with Milwaukee his entire career, and it would be really great to get him a World Series before regression hits. Going into Game 1 though, we already have a big problem as Mizorowski is not ready to go against Ohtani. That means we're giving the start to Tobias Myers, so it might be a bit of a wash here in Game 1. Sure enough, they strike first, but Garrett Mitchell delivers a go-ahead 2-run shot. We are actually producing against Ohtani as we score another run, making it 3-1. Unfortunately though, right after that, they're gonna rally with not 1 but 2 runs, tying the game, but Myers is still holding it down in the 7th while we're going up against their bullpen. Tana delivers the go-ahead run in the 7th as Collins delivers a sac fly, so in some miraculous twist, we're actually gonna be able to beat the Dodgers. Despite going up against Ohtani, we hold it down, winning 5-3. That will give us a big advantage going into Game 2 against Tyler Glasnow as we load the bases bases and strike in the first inning with 3 runs. That is an insane start, and not to mention, Mizorowski is on the mound, putting together a scoreless performance through 4 innings. This is the series that Brewers fans have been looking forward to since last year, but instead of getting swept, they are out for revenge. One of those young players who has stepped up has been Isaac Collins, who's batting 3rd in the lineup and had 2 home runs. That is a huge deal for Collins, who actually did not win Rookie of the Year, placing in 3rd place, but on the bright side, he could win the playoff MVP. We are really holding it together against this Dodgers super rotation, although now we're going up against Yamamoto, who might be the best of the bunch. After watching him in the real-life World Series, it is going to be very tough to break through him, as Brandon Woodruff is holding it down as well. Then in the 4th inning, Terang goes deep, but this has been a pitching duel the whole way through, with Woodruff having a great start. We're trying to shut out the Dodgers in game number 3, going up 3-0 in the 8th, and I can't believe that the Brewers are just 1 win away from the World Series. I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but this is looking extremely promising, as they've won 6 games in a row, so assuming they do get to the big game, they'll be awaited by either the Red Sox or the Astros. If Milwaukee's able to get the sweep, this would be the 2nd straight season that the number 1 seed team got swept in the LCS, except it would be even sweeter with the Brewers getting their revenge. In game number 4 though, we have Blake Snell versus Clay Holmes, and we're tied at 1 apiece in the 7th inning. I will say that Milwaukee's bullpen has been electric throughout the playoffs, with the exception of a few mishaps, so I trust the team in extra innings. Sure enough, they get out of the 10th inning, but strand 2 runners on base, so now in the 11th, they really need to put it away, and that is a 2-run shot to win the LCS. Because it was a walk-off, they're not going to show us the cutscene, but Contreras doubled before Caleb Durbin smashed him home. The youth of this lineup comes through again, as we're taking on Boston in the big game. At least on paper, they might be a downgrade from the Phillies and the Dodgers, but with 99 overall Garrett Crochet and the signing of Luis Ariz, you cannot underestimate a squad like this. I will say though that once again, MLB The Show really needs to fix this glitch with Roman Anthony. Being 88 overall in AAA is simply not realistic. At some point in the future, I want to make a video about franchise improvements, because from what I've seen so far on MLB 26, the game devs have basically said that nothing is changing. Nonetheless, we have a pretty serious clash of the Titans here in game number 1, with Jacob Mizorowski going up against Garrett Crochet. We're gonna need Mizorowski's best game yet, because Crochet is not one to be messed with, and we're up 1-0 early on. I cannot express how big of a deal winning this game would be for this team, especially after breaking through the Dodgers' extremely talented rotation. Our offense started out the year extremely inconsistent, but it seems they're picking things up right when it matters. However, they've left a few guys on base, they're trying to close this out, it's 2-0. Fortunately though, once again, just like we saw in the Dodgers series, they hold down a shutout, and once again, the best pitching staff in the game puts on a show. As far as the ratings in our rotation go, we might be a few steps between teams like the Dodgers, especially after trading Freddie Peralta, but the difference this year has been how guys like Logan Henderson, Tobias Myers, and Robert Gasser have stepped up. Then on top of that, the offseason signing of Jalen Beeks was a pivotal one, and Abner Uribe has definitely earned the closer role. I know we're likely losing Brandon Woodruff in the offseason, but I'm actually not worried about the future of this team, especially considering how we've rebuilt the farm system. We have guys that we can develop into regular players, while also having the flexibility to trade guys for prospects. That's why in just one offseason, I feel like we've turned this team into a true contender, as we're tied at 2 runs apiece in Game 2 of the World Series. After the sweep against the Dodgers though, I really trust us in these big game situations, although the bullpen finally lets us down. I think that is the first time that's happened in really all of the playoffs, as we're probably going to lose this game, and do. That is our first loss in 7 playoff games, which is really good, but with so much series left to play, it's very important we get back on the horse. We start things off strong with a run, but leave the bases loaded 2 innings in a row, although Contreras goes deep. That's going to put us up by 2 runs with Clay Holmes on the mound, and the former New York Met's been incredible. I don't want to speculate anything, but I feel like he's been just as good as Freddie Peralta would have been. We are now just an inning and a half away from closing this game out, and we get out of a runners at the corners situation, as Abner Uribe's looking to close it out, and there's no way. The bullpen I just spoke so highly on just got walked off against, and that is the 2nd game in a row that we've blown. Uribe blew the save right at the end before Nick Mears gave up the winning winning run, and suddenly we're down 2-1 and have only scored 2 runs in each game. Given our offensive struggles, 2-1 is quite a hole as we already give up a home run, and this is ultimately a very important game 4 as it is 2-0. Putting it simply, the Red Sox have simply been a higher power version of us, as their pitching staff has not only been better, but their offense has blown ours out of the water. They scored again, making it 3-0, and we are now 1 game away from elimination. With our season on the line, we're gonna have to beat Garrett Crochet for a second time, while also winning 3 games in a row, and that is not a good start. Luis Ariz goes deep for a solo shot off of Miz, and there's another one. For whatever reason, the pitching just did not come to play in the postseason, and I'm really hoping it doesn't cost us, as we're starting to rally, but strand the bases loaded. We should have at least been able to tie the game, but now it's 2-1, and the Red Sox are gonna score another. Unless a miracle happens, this could mark the end of our season, as it's the top of the 9th, and there's no way. That is such a clutch play from one of the biggest pieces of our future in Collins, and we are holding on for dear life going into the 12th inning. Pretty much nothing has happened in extras, as we're fast forwarding to the 14th inning, but with runners at the corners and nobody out, this could be over, but no. The show's gonna go on into the 16th inning, and this is starting to look like that game between the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. There we go. We have taken the lead, and Uribe closes them out, successfully keeping our season alive. Our bullpen completely saved us, as we're actually in a pretty okay position. It feels like we finally have some momentum, but our work is still cut out for us, as we need to win the next 2 games. And our offense continues to strand guys on base. Thank you, Contreras. We are once again tied up in the 9th inning and could be going back to extras, which would be a nightmare for both of these bullpens. There's pretty much nobody healthy, but thankfully the Brewers end it quickly with an Andrew Vaughn solo shot. That is a huge walk-off in front of our home crowd, as the Brewers do the impossible, forcing Game 7. I gotta give a ton of credit though to the rookie Robert Gasser for going 7 innings, only giving up 1 run. Thanks to the quality start, we're gonna be seeing Brandon Woodruff in Game 7. With Mizorowski's inconsistencies, he has been our best playoff pitcher, and this would be a storybook ending to a long-term career here in Milwaukee. Whether they win or lose the World Series this year, I feel like this simulation has kind of just proven that the Brewers are one of the better run organizations in the league. At least from my personal interpretation, it seems that despite always coming near the middle of the pack in payroll spend, the Brewers do about as good of a job allocating that payroll as any team in the league. Trading for players like William Contreras, along with drafting gems like Jacob Mizorowski, has set them up for success in the future, regardless of whether they move on from guys like Brandon Woodruff and Freddie Peralta. This farm system is set up very well for the future, with the number 9 prospect in baseball, along with an incoming class of some really intriguing players. It all comes down to this. We've got Brandon Woodruff in potentially his last game ever, and stakes couldn't be any higher. Unfortunately, we start out straining 2 runners on base, but Collins drives home Frelick. He has been the playoff MVP and might become the World Series MVP as we score again. The offense was asleep for most of the series, but it seems we're finally getting it done, as the Red Sox are trying their best to blow a 3-1 lead. They finally score a run and actually make it 2, so this might be closer than I thought it was gonna be. This could be the final out of the World Series, but with 2 runners on, he has to be careful. He tried to get the chase for strike 3, but couldn't get it, although this is a fly out into left field that is caught. After being down 3-1 in the series, the Milwaukee Brewers are World Series champions, completing their rebuild in just 2 seasons. While some of you might call this a fluke, I think we set up the team very well for the future, making key trades, extending William Contreras, and reloading the farm system. Nonetheless, the Brewers get the job done, redeeming their LCS sweep and raising the trophy. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and click right here to see more content.